Hi, everyone. I'm Carolyn Ferrell. I am the author of a few books. Dear Miss Metropolitan is one. And my first book is Don't Erase Me, which is a collection of short stories that came out about 25 years ago. Thank you so much for inviting me to BMCC to be a part of the Working Writers Reading Series. I'm very grateful to Jason and to Lisa and to Cheryl, Fish, and to all the students who wanted to be a part of this. Thank you so much for having me as your guest. I'd like to read a little bit from my novel, Dear Miss Metropolitan. And by way of introduction, I'll tell you that it's a novel about three girls who are kidnapped from homes that are, include some abuse, some neglect. They're kidnapped and held captive for 10 years in a house in Queens. And they are eventually liberated from this house. And the novel then goes into different times and different places and is told by different voices. So it's a novel that's made up of a lot of different sorts of things, of documents. There are photographs. The very inside of the novel has a floor plan, which someone asked me once, is it the floor plan of the house where the girls are held? And this is actually the floor plan of the Astor Mansion in Manhattan. So I use a lot of images and a lot of documents to tell the story of these girls and of their community. So let me begin with a very short piece. This is from a newspaper that I made up called the Queens Metropolitan. And it's a draft that a young intern has been writing. She wants to become a journalist. Queens Metropolitan, January 1st, 2008. Preliminary draft, special weekend feature. They would not let go. Read this story, cross it out, open these pages, and you may feel sickened by the cruelties mentioned herein. Three girls are kidnapped and held hostage in a dilapidated house in the New York City borough of Queens. They become known as the victim girls. Their captor, a man described in vague terms by all the prominent news outlets, locks the girls away in chains, ropes, and other cruel other devices, including thumbtacks and carpet nails. In his world, a paperclip can be unholy as an iron maiden. Kidnapped victims can abound in a city like ours. Scrape it out. Though each girl is abducted at different points, the aggregate period of confinement is 10 years, during which time crimes such as rape, asphyxiation, verbal degradation, and general torture occur with frequency. A number of pregnancies are said to have resulted from the sexual assaults, though to the best knowledge of the forensic detectives assigned the case, only one pregnancy is carried to term. At the time of the rescue, one of the girls is not accounted for, leading investigators to suspect the worst. Currently, this veritable house of horrors has been left to its own volition. Local politicians continually ask to have the place razed or repurposed. Thus far, no one city agency has stepped up to meet the challenge. When asked, the residents of this leafy, somewhat cigarette-strewn, of this leafy neighborhood hovering between Sutphin Boulevard to the west and Linden Boulevard, Rockaway Boulevard to the south, have no real idea how to move forward. It appears they are still in some state of shock. None claims to have suspected a thing. Several weeks after the liberation, the people of Amity Lane remain at a loss as to how such a criminal mastermind could have lived right under their noses all this time. Research done by Amina Whitehead Mensa, Queens Metropolitan Staff Intern. Now I'm going to switch to the voice of one of the girls who has been kidnapped. Her name is Fern, and she is the main protagonist of the novel. This section is called The Old College Try. So you all know what's about to happen. But before you get to those waterworks, dig, if you will, this picture. Two girls smiling. No, they are not on the boardwalk at Coney Island or Rockaway Beach, but their faces are about to break open. In other words, they're smiling the biggest watermelons God has ever seen. God, in fact, had to step back and admire his handiwork. Damn, did I do that? The girls' faces are bruised, their hands grimy. Chains, maybe barbed wires, snake into their silhouette. From one side, they look like angels, even if they're on the cusp of their most gruesome decade ever, because no amount of house dirt can hide those cherubic cheeks. From the other side, they look like the devil. No, they're not possessed, nor have they been drugged into altered states. These girls are cheery. One could even go so far as to say they are buoyant. And though they are moments away from being slung farther apart by huge, meaty man hands, the girls are positively upbeat. They have discovered each other. One time, two time, three. It's a secret, but they feel like shouting to the world, I am not alone here. In the flash of a microscopic scopic eye, they see each other's outlines and forget all doom and gloom. They forget that just moments ago, they believed they would die here in this house, all by themselves, forgotten, left behind like so much dust bunny dirt. The truth is, the girls have found a way to each other. They found that if they claw against the sheetrock, floors, ceilings, and find a gash or a slash in the fortifications, they can actually see one another, gaze upon a new countenance. You, you, you? These girls are, as per the poem that Mr. Canton made us read, even though we were in Western Civ 1, surprised by joy, impatient as the wind, we turned to share the transport. Oh, with whom? Each other, of course. These girls are relieved. It was as if they'd suddenly been blanked into normal girls in a normal world, a normal queens, flip phones on faces and Game Boys in pockets. Gwen and me recognize eyes and noses, and in general, the full flavor of our faces, and we try to reach our cheeks with our hands, but damn those chains, never mind, never mind. At least we can see each other. You, you, you. Our imaginations revved back up. Gwen and I saw ourselves almost as if we were two characters in a book of fairy tales, two fun-loving females flaneuring around Flushing Meadow Park, or else strolling the ever-enticing Queens Center Mall, or dipping into an empty church about to take it over, the way church should be taken over. Our fingers, worn to nubs in only 14 days or 14 months, feel like piano keys. I can hear your breath. No, I can hear yours. Can you sing something so I know that you're real? We didn't dare say Boss Man's name. Boss Man is the captor. But we thought it many times, the air around us souring if we were quiet in our minds. But who could be quiet? Miracles were taking place. The hole in the dividing wall, concrete, muslin, cardboard, grew larger right before our eyes. There was no house wind, no toppling. I was a real shadow, and so was she, even if all we could do was ask over and over, are you there? And answer, I am here, and widen our eyes in astonishment. Does this mean? And soften our faces with each iteration. How can it not? I won't tell you everything that came immediately after that. It's so much. I'll leave it to your own fruitful imaginations. What I will share, however, are the following fairy tales. They did happen to Gwen and me. Our voices ran like boulevards to and from each other. Do you remember what pizza tastes like? Hell, I can't even remember what pizza is. To hear a voice is to beg for a story. Our bones soon understood that we weren't each other's rescues, not in the freedom sense we begged for. Her profile and my profile were all we had. Boss Man's victims, his dolls, his fatalities, his targets, his babushkas, his casualties, his don't call us victims because we're so much more than that. We eventually stopped crying. We told each other our nicknames. We asked obligatory questions. We asked obligatory mother questions. We told each other stories. We promised one another we'd remain strong. We rejoiced a handful of minutes in human time. I'm Gwen, and maybe I can help you. I'm Fern, and I mean the same thing. I'm going to skip over to another section, and this is the section that's told, as I mentioned, there are many narrators in this book. There are many different stories that are taking place, but the eponymous Miss Metropolitan is the titular, I should say, Miss Metropolitan is an older woman who works for a newspaper, the Queen's Metropolitan, as the advice columnist. Now, she has lived across this house where these girls have been kept captive. And she's kind of suspected things were wrong, but she doesn't act on it. So the section I'm going to read is from the moment when the police rescue the girls, and she's standing there and she's thinking about how relieved she is, but she's also starting to think, why didn't I do anything about this? So this section is called Dear Miss Metropolitan. I put a picture of 3 older women in here to represent the older women of this block who sort of police it, but don't police it. According to Miss Metropolitan, watching the police lead that vicious rogue away was a sight never to be forgotten in the history of humankind. What she didn't mention in the article, however, was the way her heart had raced as she watched them handcuff the man formerly known as Ernest, or Ernesto. She didn't mention in this article the way her throat collapsed as the police spotlight shone on the boarded windows of his house where he kept the girls. She also failed to note that after the last ambulance pulled away, she believed she might be experiencing another attack of heart arrhythmia, a condition about which she told no one in the office. Every day, Miss Metropolitan felt certain she would collapse in the street and none of her neighbors would notice. Dying alone had always been something of a bad taste in her mouth. None of the above was reported in the article Matilda Marone submitted in person to the Queen's Metropolitan on December 14, 2007. She wanted to stick to the facts, as they taught her in newspaper school back in the day. But just the air alone in the frenetic nighttime of the victim girls sparked within her the need to describe, to unmask, to fully comprehend. When she arrived at the newsroom the next morning, the editor took the pages from Miss Metropolitan's hands, typewritten, double-spaced, marked up and down with whiteout and red pen, and thanked her. Last night was indeed a bad night, the editor said. Matilda Marone flopped into an office chair, placed a hand on her chest. Yes, it was a bad night, she said. It saved lives. This is at the scene where they are watching the girls being rescued. Long neighborhood trees darken the already pitch sky. An army of police smash in the door at the house across the street. A battering ram, a log, the wood splinters into the air and the sounds of high wailing can be heard, cries forming in circles in the air, from soft to loudest. Shards hang off the door frame. It takes no more than a minute for 3 bodies to appear. 3 girl bodies, maybe, 3 who clearly have not seen the light of day since forever. Matilda Marone notes to herself, these girls are nothing but pale brown rust. The girls, if they can actually be called girls, stand there and sway slightly. It doesn't seem as if they have any limbs. The crowd in the street agitates. Matilda finds their movements unseemly. She tries to listen to the crowd. That man been had those girls in the house for years and years, and we didn't know. We didn't look. They're nothing but skin and bones. I can't look anymore. Tell me what you see. I always thought that house looked strange. They say them girls been missing since Hurricane Floyd. I lost my everything in Hurricane Floyd. We didn't know. Look at them. Who can blame us? Look at them. Look. Matilda feels her chest constrict like the rolling tight of an oriental carpet. Daddy's favorite one lay in the dining room right under his cabinet containing mother's European linens. Oh heavens, is this real or is it a dream? Why is the wood debris dangling so dangerously in that doorway? Are those girls actually living creatures? Matilda almost can't breathe, almost. Where is my steno pad? My writing hand should be moving. This has been her neighborhood for over 40 years, the home of all her friends and their families and their children. This is where she walks and feels every spring pebble in the sidewalk, predicts when every summer leaf will hit the ground. Doors were not supposed to bust down like that. Those splinters might just about kill any survivors, but survivors of what? Matilda shudders. Her chest repeatedly tries to go back to normal. We've known this world since forever, she thinks. The trees, the windows, the streets, the doors. When will our knowing stop? Matilda dips her pencil on her tongue. A chance for reporting doesn't come very often around here. Not since that rap star, God rest his soul, drove down the street 2 years ago and was shot in the face. The only light is the one coming off the one functioning street lamp. Without that illumination, the shadows will complicate her writing. Never mind. In the communications course she took at Queensborough Community College, herself at the time a returning student, the journalism professors instructed the students to be resilient, to expect the unexpected, to not be afraid of the dark, to always be on the lookout. They said that life always happened when you least expected. Well, here is darkness. Here is life. It is a moment of real living, Miss Metropolitan thinks. She goes back into her house, opens the window, which had been painted shut years ago. She is a writer, and this is what writers do. She sticks her head outside, stares penetratingly at the man strapped to the ambulance gurney, now being loaded into a different ambulance, her neighbor, Ernesto, or Ernest, a sand-colored man, a loner, perhaps an ascetic, never much in the way of a conversationalist, most times not even a hello, a face as sallow as the undug flower beds surrounding his house. She once asked him if he wanted any of her rose trimmings, to no avail. She invited him over for a cup of Christmas tea. Was it 2001, 2003? Last year? She honestly doesn't recall. The man on the stretcher does not look up. In fact, Miss Metropolitan can't tell if he's breathing. They strap a mask on his face and slam the ambulance doors. Are those snowflakes she's feeling on her cheeks? A whole new set of police and firemen and ambulance arrive after the old ones leave. The cops are gone. This is normally a good neighborhood, she wants to cry out. She wants to warn everyone. Don't you think we should have done something? Because we didn't. I have looked out at that faux gingerbread house for years and years and occasionally imagined its inner workings as a watchmaker would imagine the inner life of a Longines. Never has it occurred to me that something might be wrong. There was no way of me knowing about that house. How could I? You don't know me. Miss Metropolitan closes the window. She borrows an old cardigan from her sister's closet, makes her way downstairs and back outside, where she leans on a telephone pole and feels its splinters tear at her back. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a new policeman walks up to her. She places her hand on his uniformed chest with confidence. Eventually, she watches the last police van drive away. Then, not a soul to be seen, just miles and miles of yellow tape and the vibration of a few idling cars. No sirens, no other neighbors, no other old women, no knights in shining armor. What is the passage of time? When she finds herself outside of her house for the last time that night, her steno pad back in hand, she notices the way the snow takes its time coming from the heavens. Her father is talking to her and she must listen. Do what you got to do, Maddie. You hear me? Do what you got to do. And always remember, actions speak louder than words. Miss Metropolitan starts to put that down that very line, but she hesitates. Of course, actions speak louder than words. But what sort of thing would that be for a seasoned journalist like herself to admit? Thank you.